What's going on, Muscle Monsters? Align Gonzalez here, and welcome to another episode of Muscle Masterminds, where we take a leading expert in the field and we dive deep into a very specific topic. In this episode, we are going to be talking about refeeds and diet breaks. And today I am joined by an online coach, competitive natural bodybuilder, power lifter, and he's the host of the popular health and fitness podcast, Revive Stronger, Steve Hall. Steve, glad to have you on, man.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting, and to be referred to as a leading expert within the field. I don't think I'm not humble, but I'm certainly not a leading expert. Not yet, anyway. In maybe a few years, I'll get there. But yeah, excited to be on the show, and excited for your podcast to grow as well.
Cool, man. I appreciate that. This is actually just like a special series I'm doing, where I'm kind of just getting like the top guys, the Mike Israetels, the Steve Halls, the Menno Henselmans, the Lane Nortons, and just kind of figuring out what I think, what topic they could really bring some serious value with, and then we kind of just dive into that. And so today, like I said, I want to talk about refeeds. I know you have a show coming up. I believe you just had a show maybe last week or the week before. So first and foremost, a lot of the guys listening might not even know what a refeed is. So if you could just go over, what a refeed is, maybe who needs one, and how they work.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think a good starting point is to define a refeed, because I think a lot of people aren't completely sure, and there's been various iterations of what a refeed exactly is. And the first place I came across it, I believe, was in Flexible Dieting by Lyle McDonald, who came up with various different refeeding protocols and diet breaks, and also kind of free meals, and those sort of concepts. And I think that the first thing that I would like to outline, and I think he would agree to outline, is that it's not a cheat meal. So a lot of people kind of use cheat meals within their diets, which may or may not be absolutely fine. But a refeed is something that is very much planned. There's a reason behind it, and there are kind of ideas behind each kind of element that you're implementing. So a refeed for me, and the way that I think best for people to use it, is to have at minimum a day at which they're bringing calories to maintenance, or maybe even slightly above. But the key is that they're at least hitting maintenance. As far as kind of current research shows, maintenance should be enough. But if you're under maintenance, you're not really having a break from dieting. And that is what a refeed is. It's a day not dieting, essentially. So these can be a single day refeed. It can be 2 days, 3 days. And I think after 3 days, you might be kind of skirting upon the edge of it being called a diet break, which is effectively a protracted refeeding period. But various ways to do it, and all of them have different applications for different people. But the way I see a refeed being designed is, like we said, bringing calories to maintenance, and that's mostly, if not entirely, from carbohydrates. And there's important reasons for that and implications. And this is why it's separate from a cheat meal, because typically if people have cheat meals, it's pizza, it's ice cream, it's burgers, it's chips, it's all these flipping delicious foods. And I can see why you want to have that cheat meal, but they're high fat, they're going to be minimal protein, and they're not going to actually serve the purpose that we want from a refeed, which is very much planned. It's absolutely fine to have a cheat meal as like a day not dieting, or to have a break from your diet. That's fine, but don't call it a refeed, because it's not having the same kind of program purpose. And very much for my target audience, for my clients, bodybuilding, physique athletes, if I was to use a refeed, it would be very much programmed. So the way we bring calories up is via the carbohydrates, which is mostly because this is going to have the biggest impact on the hormones we want to upregulate. So stuff like leptin, which downregulates as we diet, and the leaner we get, it also downregulates more and more. And all of these dietary fatigue factors effectively build up over the course of period of time that we're dieting, and they get harsher and harsher. And a refeeds to mitigate that. So leptin's one of the big ones, and carbohydrates are the biggest kind of impact on that hormone. They kind of make leptin come up the highest. And they also have the benefit of replenishing glycogen stores. So as we diet down, we're using stored glycogen within our muscles. We become pretty, what people might call depleted. You're not going to become fully depleted. Most people aren't, and it's not kind of a massive issue, but you'll notice you look flat, you look stringy, you look a bit crap within the mirror, and your training performance could go down. So a refeed can be really beneficial because you can kind of restock, you can refill the bucket, as it were, that's becoming depleted. And you can have more glycogen, which can set you up for better performance in the gym, which can allow you to perform better. And that will allow for more muscle mass to be retained, which is the goal when we're dieting. So we've got that kind of basis of bringing up carbohydrates for those physiological reasons. There's also the psychological reason of having a refeed is nice because it is that day not dieting. It's that break. Whether it be someone who works a 9-to-5 job through the week, and then the weekend is like maybe that's where a refeed really helps them, because they can be a bit more flexible, they can eat a bit more food, and that can like restock them and replenish them for the week coming forward. Now, what a refeed isn't is something magical. It's not doing anything kind of absolutely amazing. And as research is more so showing, to actually get like an efficacious response from your refeed, for it to really do anything much, you want at least 2 days of which that you're having the refeed. If you're having 1 day, you're going to get some psychological benefits. Obviously, you're going to replenish glycogen a bit, but you're not going to get many of long-term benefits. And in fact, even 2-3 days, the benefits from your refeeds aren't protracted. So they tend to kind of, if you have a 3-day refeed, after about 3 more days or so, and it's not kind of absolutely, it's not been tested on bodybuilders or anything like this, but those benefits are going to start to dwindle and you'll be back to where you kind of were. So in that sense, refeeds aren't magical. They're just maybe an adherence tool, and more so kind of a performance aiding tool. And different people have different kind of views on them. I very much kind of do it on an individual basis. Some people find them to be very beneficial for them. Other people prefer just to have a linear diet. And there's no argument to say that a linear diet can't be as just successful, because with that refeed, to create the calorie deficit across the week, and whilst having that refeed, you have to have a bigger deficit on the days that you are dieting, whereas a linear approach could have a lesser deficit each day but accumulate to the same weekly calorie deficit. So from what I've gathered, from what I've heard from the research and from my own clients, it appears to be that on some, it's the long-term average that the body's going to respond to. And this is becoming more clear. And I believe Lyle McDonald's actually coming up with a book shortly, hopefully. And I know Eric Helms and 3DMJ really like refeeds, particularly for females. So they, especially competitors who are dieting, and it seems to have the ability to keep their menstrual cycle ticking over a bit longer. As women get really lean, it's kind of comes with the territory sometimes where they lose that menstrual cycle function. Whereas by having kind of the 2-3 day refeeds, it can keep that going a bit longer. So for females particularly, a refeed might be quite appropriate. But for a lot of other individuals, I find there to be a kind of, you can pick and choose your battles. How would you like to do it? I think I answered some of the questions. I think there's some questions I probably skirted over, but hopefully that gives a good definition of what a refeed is, how to do it, why you might do it, and a basic overview.
Yeah. So we know what a refeed is. Essentially, we know what the benefits are. But who's a refeed for, right? Because obviously, someone who's 7% body fat, getting ready for a show, he's been dieting for 20 weeks, and someone who's 20% body fat, he's been dieting for 4 weeks. Would both of them need a refeed? Would one need the refeed more than the other? Like, when would be the right time to implement a refeed?
So I think it's a good question. And I think the initial kind of opening statement by myself probably covers it a little bit in terms of neither of them necessarily need it. It's more of a case-by-case basis on whether it's warranted and what their approach is. because you might have someone who is kind of been dieting that long period of time. Maybe they're trying to get to sub 10% body fat, or maybe they're sub 10% body fat. At this stage in their kind of fat loss, they're not looking to lose fat very quickly. In fact, they don't have a lot to lose. And if they were to lose it quickly, then they risk losing muscle mass. So having a day not dieting, a refeed, or a couple of days can lessen that calorie deficit. And that can also aid their performance in the gym. And that might help them maintain more muscle mass. So it has a few benefits there. And in addition, if they are a physique or a bodybuilder or someone along those lines, then they can use this refeed to potentially give them feedback to how they might want to approach a peaking protocol for their shows if they were going to do that, because that can certainly be a way of peaking for a show, is to kind of use that. How do you respond to that carbohydrate overfeeding? When do you look your best the days afterwards? So that can definitely be of a benefit there. And then also to take into account, I guess, just touching on who it might be appropriate for. Females, when they are dieting, they have to low calories compared to males. So having the refeed in some ways could be a benefit because it gives them that break, but it also has the downside, because if they have that higher like refeed day, then they have to equate the deficit somehow if they want to keep losing at a decent pace. So they might have to have very low days to account for that higher day. So that might edge into things, and kind of that would be very individual to the female and how they like to do things and the rate of weight loss they want. And then, yeah, for the over fat person who is like 20% body fat, they've got plenty of energy stores to kind of, and they can lose fat plenty fast. And I think, like you kind of indicated, that, I mean, if they've got that much fat to lose, why would they have a day not dieting when they could just keep dieting? The only reason there would be, again, an individual case-by-case basis, in that maybe they just need that break. It helps their adherence. We see it in studies all the time where having these kind of intermittent refeeds or periods of time not dieting actually allow people to adhere to the diet better. And this is why flexible dieting works so well, because if people screw up one day, they just know, okay, actually, I just get back to plan, rather than thinking, oh, I've really screwed myself in the foot. So I think people can really take, rather than thinking, yes, I have to refeed, or no, I don't have to refeed, they can really pick and choose. And it can be a bit of a tool, a flexible dieting tool, if you will. Like, when do I want to do this? And this is something me and my fellow coach Pascal have kind of called with our clients like reactive refeeds. So it's like, right, we're not going to necessarily plan this in for every client, but sometimes we might just be like, right, let's drop one in here. They've got kind of maybe an occasion, maybe it's a wedding, maybe they're just seeing a dip in performance a little bit and they're feeling really tired. We call it kind of a reactive refeed, where like, right, now seems like a good time to plug this in. It might be similar to like a random light day that you drop in, where we're not planning to deload yet, but you're breaching your ability to recover. Maybe we're just dropping a light day here to allow you to keep ticking over.
So would you say that, let's say, for example, I'm getting ready for a show and, you know, I've got the, you know, I'm going to fucking make this happen regardless, like, you know, sacrifice to win. And so I can diet without a refeed, but obviously I'm getting depleted, and maybe I'm still able to push to a degree what I was able to before the diet, or, you know, earlier on in the diet. But do you think that I would be at a disadvantage if I didn't include a refeed, just because I felt like, I wouldn't say good, but I could get by without it?
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a good question, and it's actually something I have done in my contest prep. So I've been now dieting properly for my kind of, I phased out my contest prep, but I'm in kind of phase 2, of which like 12 weeks or so that I've actually been dieting, and I'm in that kind of below 6% body fat. So I'm really chuffed, and I haven't taken refeeds throughout the entire time. I didn't have any. And I actually quite like an approach where maybe I use it kind of like the analogy of just saving. So you save these refeeds up where you might have had 2 every week, and you can accumulate them and you put them into a block of time, and then you have a diet break. and you utilize diet breaks more than your refeeds, and that might just be enough for you, and that might actually sit with your psychology better, where you can be like, right, I'm on the straight and narrow, I know I'm in fat loss, I know I just need to hit this same calorie intake week in, week out for 4 weeks, and then at the end of those 4 weeks I bank myself a week of diet break where I can accumulate all of that. And as far as research currently shows, that diet break is potentially going to have a bit more of a longer term positive impact on all that diet fatigue than having done those dropped in kind of refeeds. Now, whether or not one's better than the other, I think is very individual. I think, like I said at the beginning, it's going to be a long-term average thing over the many months. Kind of, if you had separate refeeds or accumulated diet breaks, what would be the difference? It's probably very very little. But I think it's an exciting area of research, and I do think diet breaks probably hold more efficacy than what a refeed does at the current state.
Okay, so let's talk about diet breaks, right? Because to me, it just sounds like a diet break is just a number of refeeds. So what's the difference between a diet break and a refeed? Is there a difference? Are you on a diet break? And maybe you touched on this earlier. On a diet break, maybe are you going above maintenance? Are you still tracking? Are you just eating intuitively? How does that work?
I think a diet break is probably a term that's maybe newer, and it's less solidified within. It's like, I don't think it's necessarily within the research, and it's not like a solid term. For me, a diet break is, like you said, it is like an accumulation of refeeds. So it's just multiple days at which you are overfeeding to maintenance, or you could be slightly above. And at least for the beginning of that, I think it's a good idea to have plenty of carbohydrates to get that short-term benefit and really replenish glycogen. But after you've maybe had 3-4 days of higher carbs, then you can actually just hit protein and calories, because now you're pretty much back to full glycogen levels. So you've got that benefit. And after, I mean, the real need for the high carbs on the refeeds is because it has a short-term response. Like, carbs have the biggest short-term response on leptin, whereas over longer periods of time, it's just calorie intake. That's what dictates that. And then obviously body fat stores that you've got, the less body fat you've got, and the more depleted they are, if that's the way to name it, the higher, the lower your leptin is going to be. So yeah, for me, a diet break is at least a week at which you are at maintenance, potentially slightly above, but at least at maintenance. And for the beginning period, you can care about carbs, but by the end, it is like an actual, there's more diet break to it, because you don't have to obsess about eating all the carbohydrates. And this can be a protracted number of weeks. It could even be a block of a month, but I see it as 1 week minimum up to like 4 weeks. So it depends on your kind of timeline, how long you've got, how much kind of planning you've made. But I definitely think they can provide a massive amount of value. And many people are a bit worried not to diet and to maintain, but sometimes that's exactly what you need. And this is kind of like, if you were to put an analogy to it, like you're a race car going around a track, having a refeed might be someone kind of, you go through the pit stop like really quickly, you just get your tires cleaned and changed. Whereas having a diet break is like, right, we can actually put in some petrol, you can get out of the car, you can chill out, you can kind of read a magazine, have some food yourself, your car's brand new, you feel really energized, and you can go for even longer. So that's kind of, if you were to put an analogy to it, I'm not sure it's a perfect match, but it kind of makes sense to me.
So when is too early for a diet break? Because, I've seen guys, they'll be dieting for, I don't know, 4 weeks, and, they just can't handle it. And let's just assume that, they're doing everything's right. They're keeping their carbs high. They're hitting their macros. They're eating food with a lot of volume, so a lot of, vegetables and things of that nature. Would you say that there is a point where it's just too early, like you're just being soft?
No, it's a good question. I actually don't think there is. I think it's almost, it's kind of like stress is stress is stress. Like everything you do is stressful. And I think for a lot of us bodybuilders, or people who are really into the gym, we love to just push it, push it, push it. We don't want to deload. We don't want to hold back. And sometimes the harder, maybe more stressful answer is to pull back. And sometimes by doing that is what, like, we don't want to, and we don't feel the need to, but sometimes it's exactly what we do need. So just like the deload is that you need that to then have more productive training for another month, maybe that diet break is just what you need to have another really productive month. Now, we never know. It depends on the individual. And I think probably 4 weeks of dieting, it certainly isn't something that's necessary. But if you don't have a timeline, if you don't have a deadline, then why not? Why not give yourself that break? Because you're going to be so much more refueled, and you're going to kind of hold on to much more muscle mass that way. It just protracts your diet a bit longer. So it becomes kind of a cost benefit analysis of, okay, maybe after 4 weeks, the benefits don't weigh out the costs, but after 8 weeks, maybe it does.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I was getting lean for a photo shoot. And then shortly after that photo shoot, we were going to go on vacation. I was probably doing 2 refeeds a week towards the end of it. I think at the low end, I was at about 250 grams of carbs a day on a regular day, not on a refeed day, obviously. But when we went on vacation, I didn't track my calories. But I ate intuitively, right? So I wasn't tracking my calories, but I was also keeping a mindful eye of what I was eating for a week, well, 5 days. Come back, and I'm a pound lighter. Would that be considered a cheat week? Would that be considered a diet break? Or is that just kind of, you know, we can't label it. It's just the fact that I didn't overeat while I was on vacation.
So no, this sounds like something I would implement with my clients a lot of the time, where we know there's a holiday coming in future, and that's what I'd class as a diet break, and it's the perfect time. You focus on, hit your protein, pretty much hit calories, like eat to satiety. Don't worry too much about it. Make good mindful choices. Don't stress out if you want to have a dessert. And then, I mean, most people, I don't know, who are into health and fitness at least, are very active when they're on holiday. They end up eating more, so that actually just, they feel more energetic, they end up moving more, and you may well have potentially lost some more fat over that period of time. Potentially it was just water weight because there's a buildup of dietary kind of cortisol and stress, and you had that edema going on, and it just released that. But yeah, that's what I'd call, that's like a really nice way of having a diet break, because you also get the psychological break of being in the gym and everything like that. So you come back really well, I assume, and hopefully you did come back really well recovered and feeling good to diet again if you needed to.
Yeah, for sure. And so when I came back, I obviously, you know, I felt great. I was still training while I was on vacation. I think that most of us, that's just part of our day, right? Just like brushing your teeth. You sometimes love to go to the gym. And then obviously when I came back, I didn't have the quote unquote diet feels. So I definitely was ready. I didn't have to, but if I needed to, I could have certainly continued my diet. Now, do you think that maybe refeeds are a good way to kind of mitigate our kind of wanting to just have these crazy cheat meals?
I certainly do think they can. It depends on the person. So some people like knowing that they're in a diet and then they have a break coming at this certain point, and they might be someone who has like trigger foods. And so when they come to their refeed, it's like they've opened the floodgates, and it's just like, right, I may have only had 400 grams of carbs, but I had to finish that box of kind of Reese's Puffs, and they were going to get consumed. If I open the pack, they're all being eaten. So those sort of people, they really might not do well with refeeds. If someone has kind of like a binge eating mentality, it just doesn't sit well with them. Or if they have, some people have that kind of, if they have tasty foods, then they just go off track, and they're better off being quite black and white about it. And whereas that doesn't sound very flexible, for them, it's kind of that they have to have that degree of control. And then once they know, oh, you've got weeks of eating like this, they can moderate it much better. Whereas other people are, maybe they are the people that need that kind of that day of having that break where they can have some of those really delicious foods. And I've got a client, for example, who he's Italian and lives in Italy, and his mum, like every weekend, loves to take him to this Italian restaurant, and they love having this pizza together. And so I could be like, no, we're sticking to this deficit every single day of the week, and you can't have that pizza. And he's probably thinking, screw this, like I'm just going to go and do it. So rather than have that situation going on, it's right, we allow for that pizza. Like you really enjoy that, you enjoy that time with your friends and family, have that pizza. That's going to keep you adhering to the diet. So I think it's very much whatever approach allows you to best adhere to the diet. I don't think people should necessarily see refeeds as like a magic solution, but there definitely shouldn't be kind of, oh, I shouldn't be having this day not dieting. It's like negatively affects my progress. It could certainly positively influence it.
Yeah. So this doesn't really have anything to do with refeeds, but we're kind of on the topic of dieting. And I get this question a lot when people, they'll go over their calories one day and so they want to know, what do I do? Like, am I decreasing my carbs the next day? Do I do extra cardio? I know what my answer typically is when this happens, but I kind of want to get your take on, someone's getting ready for a show. Maybe they're, not a week out, but maybe a little bit further out. So you have some time and they just have one of those days where they go over their calories. What are you having them do? Are you saying, okay, let's count this as your refeed? Are you saying, let's just keep moving forward? Are you saying, like, we got to do more cardio this week? How are you handling that kind of situation?
So I always send them a message saying, I'm massively disappointed in you. I really, really, if this happens again, you're off my client list. I'm dropping you as a client. You have to do 1,000 calories of list right now. Drop everything you're doing, do this list. And then straight after that, you have to go and run circuits for, no, I mean, I think I'm giving the answer that you're probably expecting, in that I'm very much, I mean, it's actually very individual, but 9 times out of 10, it will be the answer of, it's okay, don't stress about it. The stress would actually cause worse. Like they're stressed enough about it rather than trying to mitigate it in any sort of way. And I often find it's like this pendulum. They've gone this way. If you try and swing them back to neutral, you actually end up missing it. They go this way and then they swing back. And then you end up getting this pendulum of, they kind of binge, they purge, they binge, they purge. And that purge could be excess cardio, it could be excess weight training, it could be excess anything. If you push them to the other edge, they're going to swing back, and they're going to be that type of person. So we just want to bring them straight back to the middle, bring them to neutral. And so I just say, right, you know what flexible dieting is, right? It's all about, just for the most part, hitting your goals. And if we do that for 80% of the time, we're going to be right on track. So let's get back on track. Let's nail everything, dot your I's and T's for the rest of the week, and we'll be okay. The problem comes is when you try and react to it and kind of, do an extra amount of cardio or cut back calories or even remove one of their refeeds. I think for the most part, it's, they maybe needed that they needed that break. But it's also not just leaving it as, it's okay, don't worry about it. There's got to be what caused this? Why did this happen? Was there stress? What's going on in your life? Is there just something that turned up out of the blue? Can we diagnose this so we can stop it happening in future? Because we don't want it to be a frequent occurrence.
What if they're like a week and a half out from a show? Does that change?
I think if you're a week and a half out, you haven't got a lot. You should be ready already, basically. You should be shredded. And so if anything, I would just be like, right, we're a week and a half out. This is like your last bit of hard overreaching training, because we're going to pretty much dial it back during your peak week. Just go and hit the weights hard, go and enjoy it, go and like try and build some muscle in the gym. Don't stress about it. I don't think, unless it was a horrendous number of calories, I don't think they're going to have done enough damage at that point. Especially because the body's just so responsive to calories when you're that lean. It'll absorb so much just because of how sensitive you are to insulin and everything. it just might dull your peak week. So maybe you plan to front load them on a number of like 600 grams of carbs. Maybe you're like, right now, actually they've refilled some of their glycogen stores. We'll just bring them to 400, just dial it back a little bit.
Yeah. What do you say about people who they go over their calories, right? Let's say 100 calories, not a big deal. But they just assume, okay, I already fucked up today, so I'm just going to go all the way. And so they just continue to kind of do more damage. And it's almost like when people joke about this person ordering this huge burger and then a Diet Coke. But what most people don't realize is that maybe the burger fit into their overall calories and they just didn't have any more for the Diet Coke. So what do you think that, I mean, what do you think that is, like what do you tell your clients about, about that? Like, if you go over, just kind of, that's it, but don't make it a whole thing.
So yeah, I really don't like this when it happens. It's just, as a coach, it makes your heart kind of burn, and it's quite upsetting when someone's just so close and then they just decide to go, fuck it. Like they've just had a little bit more and that causes them to completely break down. I think that the key is not punishing them. It's kind of sounds counterintuitive and it sounds like something you wouldn't do, but as soon as you get into that pendulum swinging of, oh, I've done this, so I can counteract it by doing this. And so then they see it as acceptable for it to happen because they're like, right, I know if I do that, then I have this I can implement to counter it. And then they get into a cycle of, oh, I see how far I can push it. Like I've gone over 1,000, so I can cut back 1,000. And then they just end up getting to this horrible cycle, and there's no predictability in their scale weight. There's no predictability in their training. They feel awful. They get into a bit of a wreck. I try and mitigate it by having things like calorie ranges, carbohydrate, fat, protein ranges, so they can land within this range rather than feeling they have to stick religiously to certain numbers. And then also weekly averages rather than hitting kind of day-to-day absolute figures. So they know, right, for most people, I work with mostly physique competitors. I want them to hit their protein every single day. But if they want to go up 20% on their calories one day, then they know they can 2 days later go down 10%. I think having that margin of about 20% leeway is enough to give some flexibility, but not so much you start that pendulum swinging. But there's some people that are mature enough to do it, and they can you can almost have those clients who will be like, right, I'm actually just going to implement intermittent fasting this week, and they'll be fine. Whereas other people, they're trying intermittent fasting or something extreme along those lines, and they'll be like, I binged. And then it's not for them. But I think sometimes you have to suffer to learn. We always learn best from our mistakes. So I think as long as it's good that they have a coach to then coach them through it, because then that could create something negative.
Yeah, cool. So I want to wrap it up with one kind of actionable piece of advice, right? So we're talking about diet breaks. We're talking about refeeds. We know what the refeeds are. You should know by now if you actually need one. So what I want you to do is kind of just go over how you would implement the refeed, right? So we know we got to keep our calories at maintenance, but we got to bring our carbs up. So what exactly are we doing with our proteins and our fats? Obviously, we're bringing them down, but how do you choose which one to bring down, how much, things like, is there like a guideline that you could give us?
Yeah, I think the easiest way, and I apologize, I didn't touch on protein or fats, probably because I'm too used to everyone knows everything. So with your protein and fats, they're pretty much just keep them the same. So whatever protein you've been eating, whatever fat you've been eating, hopefully it's been sufficient for what you need, and then just bring up the rest of your calories via carbohydrates. That's the easiest way to go about it. The key is bringing the carbs up and getting ample protein. Fats don't matter so much at this point because you're bringing calories to maintenance. It's a short period of time. If you wanted to lower your fats, you could. But yeah, if for refeed purposes, keep your fats and protein level, increase your carbs to maintenance, and you're good as gold. That would be really good.
Okay, so then let me ask you this. if you are going to refeed, and I don't even know if we would call it a refeed at this point, but let's say you just wanted a day where you could enjoy more carbs. We all love carbs, but you didn't want to go back to maintenance. You want to kind of still stay in that deficit. Could we then just increase our carbs a certain amount, decrease, maybe pull back our fats or our protein a bit, to kind of stay at that deficit but still get more carbs? Is that a viable option? And what are the pros and is there any cons to that?
So I think 100% that's viable. Again, I would say try and keep your protein at that kind of 1 gram per pound, that kind of efficacious. We know that's enough to kind of maintain muscle mass, all those good things. And then, yeah, I mean, if you were just to hit your protein and calories, you could have, that's a tremendous fat loss diet for the majority of people. Now, the negatives that I could see are only for maybe physique competitors who are getting kind of nearer to stage. They need that predictability in their scale weight. If they go really high carb, low fat one day, they might see a shift in the scale that they're not used to. It might shift out their sodium levels if maybe they ate loads of like pop chips or something delicious along those lines that made them drink loads and have loads of sodium. So that's the only negative I could really see coming along those lines, is the potential kind of unpredictability of things to come forward. And then the only other thing is I wouldn't go too low fat for too long. There's a certain amount of fat that we just need for good health. It will differ for different individuals, and you can get away with going low fat for quite a while. But if you're going for months of maybe kind of under 0.25 grams per pound, then you're probably risking kind of potential hormones that are going to get down regulated. So yeah, no, I don't think that would be a problem, as long as protein and calories are in check. For the most part, most diets equate.
Yeah, cool. Awesome, man. I think that pretty much covers everything. If there's anything you think we kind of left out in terms of refeeds or diet breaks, please feel free. But otherwise, could you just tell everybody, where they can find you? I know you have, you're pretty active on Instagram. I know you guys are doing it really big right now with the podcast. So just kind of, wherever you want guys to follow you or connect with you, maybe someone interested in coaching, where can they find you?
So yeah, thank you so much for getting me on and having a chat. And it's been really fun actually just going through all of these different terms and kind of, yeah, hopefully giving some people some practical advice. And if people do have questions or concerns or anything, they can reach out to me. So I'm Steve Hall on Facebook, and our page is revivestronger.com, and basically anything revivestronger.com, or rather, if you go to revivestronger.com, you'll be able to find the podcast there. You hopefully be able to find the Instagram there, but our tag is Revive Stronger, at Revive Stronger. You'll be able to find us. And yeah, mostly on Instagram, I post every single day, try and give some value over on there. And I'm active on the stories as well. So if people want to engage with me directly, they can. And then yes, YouTube, Revive Stronger. There's the podcast there, and over on iTunes and SoundCloud and everything. If they just kind of Google Revive Stronger, and I've said it enough times, they'll be able to find us.
Very cool. Yeah, so for anybody who's watching, I'm going to link all of that stuff in the description, so you're not actually going to have to Google it. I'll have all the links up there, and if you're listening to the podcast, then all the links will be in the show notes. And that's pretty much it. We'll talk to you guys soon. And Steve, again, thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Cheers, guys.